Most people know Marco Polo as the legendary traveler who opened the East for Europe. But what if I told you that much of his story might be exaggerated, misunderstood, or even false? In this video, we're going to uncover the truth behind the legends, separate fact from fiction, and reveal secrets about his journey that historians have debated for centuries. By the end, you'll see Marco Polo in a way you've never seen before. From a young Venetian boy to a guest in the court of Kublai Khan, Marco Polo's story is full of adventure, mystery, and historical intrigue. Today, we're diving deep into his travels, the myths surrounding them, and the little-known facts that could change everything you think you know about one of history's greatest explorers. When we think of Marco Polo, we often picture him as a fearless traveler navigating the vast deserts and mountains of Asia. But before the Silk Road, before the Mongol Empire, before the legendary tales that would capture the imagination of Europe, Marco Polo was just a young boy growing up in the bustling city of Venice. Born in 1254 into a family of wealthy merchants, Marco was surrounded by the rhythm of trade and the scent of spices long before he ever dreamed of faraway lands. Venice at the time was not just a city. It was a living marketplace, a gateway between East and West, a place where merchants, sailors, and explorers crossed paths daily. Marco's father, Niccolo Polo, and his uncle, Maffeo Polo, were already seasoned travelers who had ventured east years before Marco was born. Their journeys to the courts of powerful rulers and their encounters with foreign cultures would shape Marco's imagination and destiny. As a child, Marco Polo was not unlike any other Venetian boy of his social class, learning the skills of reading, writing, and arithmetic, but there was something different about him. He listened intently to his father and uncle's stories of distant kingdoms, of cities paved with gold, of spices that could transform the simplest meal into a feast, and of emperors whose power seemed limitless. These stories were more than entertainment. They were lessons in geography, diplomacy, and human ambition. Imagine young Marco sitting by the hearth as his father described the wonders of the East, painting pictures of lands he had never seen yet felt he could almost touch. But Marco's early life was not only shaped by the grandeur of these tales. Venice itself was a crucible of political intrigue and mercantile competition. Growing up amid the canals, markets, and palaces of the city, Marco learned the value of observation, negotiation, and adaptability skills that would later become essential on the Silk Road. He witnessed merchants bargaining fiercely over silks, precious metals, and spices, and he saw how the world of trade was deeply intertwined with power and influence. These experiences taught him that to survive and succeed in foreign lands, one had to understand not just the terrain, but also the people, their customs, and their motives. By the time he was a teenager, Marco Polo had already developed an insatiable curiosity. He was not content with stories alone. He wanted to see the world with his own eyes. He was fascinated by maps and travelers' journals, often sketching imaginary routes and dreaming of distant mountains, deserts, and rivers. Venice, with its intricate network of waterways and bustling docks, became a classroom of exploration. He watched ships arrive from distant lands, their crews bringing with them not just goods, but tales of strange cultures, unfamiliar animals, and exotic technologies. Every arriving merchant was a teacher, every cargo a lesson in geography, commerce, and diplomacy. Marco's upbringing also instilled in him a sense of courage and resilience. Life in Venice was not without danger. Pirates, rival merchants, and political instability were constant threats, but these challenges only strengthened his resolve. His family encouraged him to embrace curiosity, to question, and to venture beyond the familiar. Marco's early life, therefore, was not merely a preparation for travel. It was a crucible in which his character, intellect, and adventurous spirit were forged, setting the stage for a journey that would eventually take him farther than any European had gone before. The journey of Marco Polo to the East was no ordinary adventure. It was a trek that would take him and his family across thousands of miles of deserts, mountains, rivers, and uncharted lands at a time when travel itself was perilous and uncertain. In 1271, Marco, only 17 years old, set out with his father Niccolo and Uncle Maffeo on a journey that had already begun decades before with his father's first ventures into the unknown. Leaving behind the canals of Venice, The trio entered a world that most Europeans had never imagined, embarking on a journey that would take them across the Silk Road, through lands of unimaginable diversity, danger, and splendor. The Silk Road itself was a web of trade routes stretching from the Mediterranean to the far reaches of China. But it was not a smooth highway, it was a gauntlet of deserts, mountains, and hostile territories. Marco and his family faced extreme climates, from the searing heat of Central Asian deserts to the bitter cold of high mountain passes. At every step, survival required not only endurance but careful planning, diplomacy, and courage. They traversed regions controlled by local warlords, tribal chiefs, and empires with shifting alliances, and they had to navigate a complex tapestry of cultures, languages, and customs. Every village, every caravanserai, every marketplace offered both opportunity and threat. Along the way, Marco encountered people and traditions that would later fill the pages of his famous accounts. He marveled at the cities built along rivers, at the architecture of fortified towns, and at the markets overflowing with silks, spices, gems, and exotic goods from distant lands. He learned to read the customs of different peoples, understanding that respect and adaptability could mean the difference between life and death. The Paulos traveled through Persia, where they encountered Persian scholars, traders, and craftsmen whose knowledge of science, art, and commerce was centuries ahead of much of Europe. They'd passed through the vast steppes of Central Asia, where nomadic tribes roamed, their survival dependent on the rhythm of the seasons, their horses, and their alliances. The journey also tested their resilience in ways that were deeply physical and psychological. Harsh deserts offered little water, treacherous mountain passes threatened with avalanches or sudden storms, and bandits were a constant danger along the trade routes. The family had to rely on local guides, interpret languages, and sometimes negotiate for safe passage with rulers or tribal leaders. Every step required trust, careful observation, and quick thinking, and young Marco absorbed it all, learning lessons in diplomacy, strategy, and cultural sensitivity that would serve him in the Mongol court years later. Despite the hardships, the journey was also a time of wonder and discovery. Marco encountered wildlife that seemed mythical, from camels and snow leopards to elephants in distant kingdoms. He saw landscapes that defied imagination, towering mountains that touched the clouds, deserts that shimmered like gold, and rivers that stretched beyond the horizon. Every town and city offered stories, legends, and traditions that seemed to blend the real with the fantastical. Marco recorded every detail in his mind, aware that these experiences were shaping not just his understanding of the world, but his future as a chronicler of history. The Polo family's arrival in the Mongol Empire marked the culmination of a journey that many could not even imagine attempting. Through sheer perseverance, curiosity, and courage, Marco had crossed continents, witnessed civilizations, and learned the complexities of human society in ways no European of his time could claim. The journey to the east was more than a physical voyage, it was a transformation, molding Marco from a Venetian teenager into a worldly observer, a navigator of cultures and a recorder of truths and mysteries that would later inspire generations of explorers and adventurers. When we hear the name Marco Polo, our minds immediately conjure images of a lone Venetian traveler journeying across deserts, riding camels through endless sands, and arriving in a glittering court filled with unimaginable wealth and exotic wonders. His tales, compiled in the Travels of Marco Polo, have been read and celebrated for centuries. But separating fact from fiction is far from simple. Marco Polo's accounts blur the line between reality and imagination, leaving historians and scholars debating which parts of his journey were true, which were exaggerated, and which may have been outright fabricated. The first challenge lies in the lack of contemporary corroboration. While Polo's journey coincided with the height of the Mongol Empire under Kublai Khan, there are very few records from Mongol sources that mention him directly. Some historians argue that if Marco Polo had truly held a significant role at the Mongol court, as he claimed, there would likely be more evidence in Chinese records. Others suggest that he may have understated or overstated certain aspects of his travels depending on the audience for whom his stories were recorded. After all, his account was dictated to Rustichello de Pisa while they were imprisoned in Genoa, and some embellishment may have been introduced to make the tales more compelling for a European readership hungry for exotic adventure. Then there are the incredible details that seem almost too fantastical to be true. Marco describes a kingdom of gold and silver, cities with streets paved in precious metals, and an emperor whose court included elephants and grand treasures beyond imagination. Modern historians often question whether he witnessed these things personally, or if some were hearsay, exaggerated reports from other travelers, or interpretations of local folklore. Yet, even if certain descriptions were embellished, they reveal much about the perception of the East in medieval Europe, a land of wealth, mystery, and opportunity that had been largely unknown to Western audiences. Another point of contention is his journey's route. Some skeptics claim that Polo may never have reached China at all, suggesting that he could have traveled only as far as Persia or Central Asia and gathered stories from other merchants. Supporters of his travels point to the detailed observations he made about Mongol customs, the Chinese economy, paper money, postal systems, and even the geography of regions that were unknown to Europeans at the time. These details are so precise that it is difficult to imagine them being fabricated, lending credibility to the idea that Marco Polo did indeed reach the heart of the Mongol Empire, even if some of his accounts were dramatized. There are also cultural and technological facts embedded in his writings that provide strong evidence of first-hand experience. He describes Chinese inventions like coal as fuel, the functioning of paper currency, and the use of saltpeter in warfare, all knowledge that was largely absent in Europe at the time. Additionally, his depictions of the social hierarchy, court etiquette, and governance under Kublai Khan show an intimate understanding of Mongol administration. Even if some of his tales were exaggerated, these elements suggest that Polo was an astute observer and meticulous recorder of what he saw, offering Europeans their first detailed glimpse into the sophisticated societies of the East. Yet the myths surrounding Marco Polo are almost as important as the facts. Tales of him encountering bizarre creatures, kingdoms ruled by women, and monstrous animals were eagerly consumed in Europe, shaping the imagination of generations of explorers and adventurers. These myths, whether true or not, transformed Marco Polo into a legend whose impact went far beyond the simple recounting of his travels. They created a bridge between East and West, inspiring curiosity, trade, and eventually the voyages of explorers like Christopher Columbus, who carried the idea of distant, exotic lands firmly in his mind. Upon arriving in the Mongol Empire, Marco Polo entered a world that was as vast as it was unfamiliar. The court of Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, was unlike anything he had ever imagined. It was not just a seat of power, but a sprawling hub of administration, culture, and intrigue, stretching across territories that spanned from the deserts of Central Asia to the lush river valleys of China. For a young Venetian accustomed to the canals and markets of Venice, this world was dizzying in its scale, its hierarchy, and its customs. Every day presented lessons not found in books, challenges that required tact and observation, and opportunities to witness the complexities of one of history's greatest empires. Marco quickly adapted to life in the court, learning that survival and influence required more than curiosity. They demanded intelligence, diplomacy, and respect for traditions that were deeply rooted in Mongol society. The court operated like a well-oiled machine, where the decisions of the Khan rippled through countless territories and affected millions of lives. Polo observed how officials were appointed, how messages and decrees were delivered across vast distances, and how the Mongols balanced military power with governance and trade. It was a system of efficiency and discipline underpinned by strict protocols that outsiders would struggle to understand, but Marco learned to navigate it with keen attention to detail and a willingness to absorb everything he saw. One of the most fascinating aspects of his time in the court was witnessing Kublai Khan's unique approach to leadership. The Khan was not only a formidable warrior, but also a visionary ruler who sought to integrate the diverse cultures within his empire. Marco marveled at the court's organization, the mix of Mongol, Chinese, and other regional customs, and the intricate ceremonies that conveyed authority and legitimacy. Every interaction, from the way envoys were received to the subtle gestures of respect, carried meaning. For Marco, understanding these nuances was crucial. It allowed him to move through a world that was both welcoming and intimidating, observing without drawing undue attention, recording without offending, and learning without challenging the authority around him. The cultural experiences were equally mesmerizing. Marco encountered elaborate banquets, intricate art, music, and poetry, all of which were expressions of power, prestige, and tradition. The Khan's court was a center of learning and innovation, where trade, science, and diplomacy intertwined. Marco noted not only the richness of the material culture, the silks, jewels, and tapestries, but also the sophistication of governance, the use of currency, the postal system, and the methods of taxation and trade regulation. Each observation added depth to his understanding of an empire that was, in many ways, ahead of Europe in administration and technology. Yet life in the Mongol court was not without its challenges. Political intrigue, rivalries among officials, and the constant expectation of loyalty to the Khan demanded caution. Marco had to navigate complex social hierarchies, understanding who held influence, who could be trusted, and how to communicate effectively without overstepping boundaries. His ability to observe and adapt made him valuable not only as a visitor, but as someone who could serve as a mediator, messenger, and chronicler of the empire's vast operations. Marco's years at the court transformed him from a traveler into a participant in history. He was no longer simply a visitor marveling at exotic landscapes and customs. He had become a careful observer of power, culture, and human behavior. Every interaction, every ceremony, every market he visited, and every official he encountered added layers of understanding that he would later record in his writings. The Mongol court was more than a destination. It was a classroom where Marco learned the subtleties of diplomacy, the strategies of leadership, and the complexity of an empire that bridged continents, cultures, and centuries. Marco Polo's journey to the East did not end with his return to Venice. In fact, that was only the beginning of his influence on history. The experiences, observations, and stories he brought back from the Mongol Empire rippled across Europe, shaping perceptions of the wider world and inspiring generations of explorers, merchants, and scholars. In an era when much of Asia was unknown to Europeans, his accounts provided a rare glimpse into distant civilizations, offering details about trade, culture, technology, and governance that were previously unimaginable. For many, Marco Polo's writings were more than just adventure tales. They were windows into a world that seemed both real and fantastical, bridging the gap between East and West. One of the most significant impacts of Marco Polo's travels was on European trade. His descriptions of spices, silks, jewels, and other exotic goods fueled the imagination of merchants eager to establish connections with distant markets. The idea that such wealth and opportunity existed far beyond the Mediterranean motivated European traders to venture further, laying the groundwork for the expansion of trade networks that would eventually span continents. Polo's detailed accounts of caravan routes, ports, and marketplaces provided practical knowledge that could be applied by merchants and explorers seeking to navigate unfamiliar territories. By mapping the economic and cultural landscape of Asia, Marco Polo inadvertently became a guide for European commerce, influencing patterns of trade for decades. Beyond commerce, Marco Polo's writings had a profound effect on European understanding of geography and culture. Before his travels, much of Asia was shrouded in mystery, and many maps were based on speculation, myth, or incomplete knowledge. Polo's vivid descriptions of cities, rivers, mountains, and political structures challenged preconceived notions, introducing Europeans to the scale, sophistication, and diversity of the East. His accounts of cities like Hangzhou, with their bustling markets and advanced infrastructure, contrasted sharply with the relatively smaller and less urbanized towns of Europe at the time. These details expanded the European imagination, encouraging curiosity and a desire to explore, understand, and engage with the wider world. Marco Polo's influence extended beyond trade and geography to the realm of culture and knowledge. His observations of Mongol governance, military strategy, and technological innovations offered insights into alternative ways of organizing societies. The use of paper money, postal systems, and complex taxation systems in China fascinated European readers, revealing that civilization could thrive in ways very different from what they knew. Scholars, cartographers, and writers drew upon his descriptions, incorporating them into maps, textbooks, and chronicles that shaped European intellectual thought. Even fantastical elements, such as tales of strange animals or unusual customs, spurred debate, analysis, and curiosity, blurring the line between fact and fiction while stimulating critical inquiry. Perhaps the most enduring impact of Marco Polo's travels was their role in inspiring exploration. The dream of reaching Asia, of discovering wealth, new cultures, and untapped territories, became a driving force for explorers like Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and others. Polo's writings provided both a roadmap and a vision, showing that distant lands were not only real, but accessible, and that the world was far larger and more interconnected than previously imagined. His stories ignited ambition, curiosity, and a hunger for adventure that would fuel the age of exploration, changing the course of history and opening the doors to centuries of cultural exchange, trade, and discovery. Even centuries after his travels, Marco Polo remains a figure wrapped in mystery, and many aspects of his journey continue to spark debate among historians. While his tales of distant lands and remarkable encounters captured the imagination of Europe, the question of how much he actually witnessed and how much was passed along through hearsay remains one of history's most tantalizing puzzles. Did Marco Polo truly reach the heart of China, or did he rely on second-hand accounts from other merchants and travelers he met along the way? The lack of definitive evidence in Chinese records leaves room for speculation, and this uncertainty has fueled controversy for generations. Scholars have scoured ancient texts, maps, and local histories, searching for clues that could confirm or refute his presence in the Mongol court, yet no single piece of evidence provides a conclusive answer. Beyond the question of whether he physically reached certain regions, there are other inconsistencies in his accounts that intrigue researchers. For instance, he rarely mentions the Great Wall of China, which was already in existence, and he omits references to major landmarks or practices that modern historians would expect a first-hand observer to notice. These omissions have led some to theorize that Marco Polo may have relied heavily on the knowledge of other travelers, compiling a mixture of direct observation, second-hand stories, and imagination. Yet at the same time, his writings contain remarkable details about governance, culture, trade, and technology in the Mongol Empire that are difficult to dismiss, suggesting a depth of knowledge that would have been hard to acquire without extended experience in the region. Another layer of mystery surrounds his relationship with Kublai Khan. Marco Polo described serving as a trusted envoy and advisor, sent on diplomatic missions across the empire. If true, this role would have been extraordinary for a foreigner, giving him access to insights and experiences that few Europeans could ever hope to achieve. Yet historical documentation from Mongol sources does not clearly confirm his presence in the court, leaving historians to speculate whether his portrayal of his duties was exaggerated or symbolic, meant to convey the significance of his travels rather than a literal account of his status. This ambiguity raises broader questions about the nature of historical storytelling and how personal narratives can shape and sometimes distort our understanding of the past. The mysteries surrounding Marco Polo's journey also extend to the broader context of the Silk Road and cross-cultural encounters. Many scholars ponder whether Polo's descriptions of certain regions reflect actual visits or the accumulation of knowledge from other traders, local guides, and scribes he encountered along the way. His writings often blend fact with folklore, such as accounts of strange creatures, kingdoms ruled entirely by women, or cities paved with precious metals. While some details may seem fantastical, they provide insight into how medieval Europeans conceptualized the East, and they reveal the challenges Polo faced in translating unfamiliar cultures into terms that his audience could understand. Finally, the historical secrets of Marco Polo's travels remind us that exploration is rarely straightforward. His journey was not simply a linear adventure from Venice to China. It was a complex web of observation, storytelling, and cultural exchange. Every anecdote he recorded, every encounter he described, and every detail of trade, governance, or custom opens a window into a world that was simultaneously real and mysterious. Historians continue to debate, analyze, and search for evidence, yet the questions persist. How much did Marco Polo truly witness? How much was legend? And how did a young Venetian boy's journey across continents leave a legacy that would shape European understanding of the world for centuries? Marco Polo's journey was far more than a simple voyage across continents. It was a bridge between worlds, a story of curiosity, courage, and discovery that continues to captivate us centuries later. From his early days in the bustling canals of Venice to the deserts and mountains of the Silk Road, and finally into the heart of the Mongol Empire, Marco's experiences reshaped how Europe viewed the East. His tales, blending fact and legend, brought distant lands to life, inspiring trade, exploration, and imagination for generations. Yet perhaps what makes Marco Polo truly remarkable is not just the places he visited, but the questions he left behind. Which parts of his story were truth and which were embellished? Did he witness everything firsthand, or did he gather knowledge from those he met along the way? These mysteries remind us that history is not always clear-cut, and that the act of exploration is as much about curiosity and storytelling as it is about discovery. Ultimately, Marco Polo's legacy is timeless. He showed that the world is vast, interconnected, and full of wonder, and he proved that one person's courage and curiosity can leave an indelible mark on history. His journey continues to inspire dreamers, adventurers, and historians alike, reminding us that the pursuit of knowledge and understanding can take us to places beyond imagination and beyond the maps of our time.